An extraordinary event happened in Russia on July 7th. Russian President Vladimir Putin fired the Minister of Transportation Roman Starovoyt, and 4 hours later, Starovoyt's body was found in a car near his house. Right from the moment Starovoyt's death was announced, oddities started appearing all over, coming from the government officials, from the investigators, from the media, from the senators, from all over. And literally minutes after minister's death was announced, second odd death occurred. One of the minister's subordinates, a 42-year-old healthy Ministry of Transportation official, died right at his office. In this video, I want to share two messages with you. First message, I would like to investigate former Minister Starovoyt's death closely and show you that there are more questions than answers. And the second message, which is much more important, I think it's the most important event that's happened so far this summer, perhaps so far this year. It is the fatal impact this event will have on Russian political system, on the vertical of power. First, let's talk of what happened. I'll be very brief. First, who was Roman Starovoyt? He worked at St. Petersburg city government at a mid-level position where he met the Rothenberg brothers, Putin's closest friends from childhood. Then Roman Starovoyt's career took off. In 2008, he became the deputy head of Rosavtodor, Russia's federal road agency. He played a major role in construction of Russia's federal road network. In 2012, he became the head of Rosavtodor, so he made a step up the ladder. There, he oversaw massive, expensive infrastructure project financed by the federal budget, including the upgrades to the major highways like M4, Don, connecting Moscow and Novorossiysk, construction of new bridges in Siberia, in the Russian Far East, and of course, his crown jewel project was the Crimea Bridge. Putin personally oversaw the construction. In 2018, after the bridge was commenced, Starovoyt was made Deputy Minister of Transportation of Russia. He briefly served as the Deputy Minister and moved on to become the Governor of Kursk Province. For 6 years, he was at the helm of the province from 2011 to 2024. And his last job was the Minister of Transportation of Russian Federation. He held the job from May 2024 to July 2025. He was the top among the top in Putin's Russia. Young, smart, loyal, Putin's favorite, and that's rare. There are just a few dozen of people like Starovoyt in Russia. This is what happened to him. The clouds started thickening above Starovoyt after the Ukrainian armed forces invaded Kursk province and held it for 9 months. And that was quite a slap on Putin's face. Scapegoat was needed, or actually scapegoats were needed. And the arrests followed. And one of the arrests was Starovoyt's deputy while he was serving as the governor. Another arrest was of former Kursk governor who replaced Starovoyt. Both former deputy and the governor testified against Starovoyt. So Starovoyt was fired by Putin's personal order on July 7th, and just hours later was found dead in his car. And that's where it gets very odd. Now, I'm going to give you chronology of what happened. First message appeared on the firing of Starovoyt, appeared in the media a little after 9 a.m. It appeared in official Russian state media, and the first report of Starovoyt's death appeared around 2 p.m., just a few hours after propaganda channels said that Starovoyt was fired. And the first message, I clearly remember, it said that Starovoyt shot himself in his house. 15 minutes later, literally 15 minutes later, one of Russian senators, Andrei Kartopolov, made an official statement that Starovoyt died quite some time ago, not after he was fired. Then reports started coming in that Starovoyt shot himself in his car. And then the new reports started coming in that Starovoyt shot himself in the bushes not too far from his car. Then there was a video footage released by RIA Novosti, that's official state news channel. So the video showed Starovoyt's car and the investigators around the car, and they were carrying the body. And then there was a report by Forbes citing the insiders at the investigation that Starovoyt shot himself 2 days prior, in the night from the 5th to the 6th. That coincided with what Kartapolov said. But according to the website of the Ministry of Transportation of Russia, Roman Starovoyt held an emergency meeting on the ammonia leak happened in one of the sea tankers on Sunday, July 6th, and it was filmed and uploaded to the website of the Ministry of Transportation. It looks like Starovoyt held the meeting being dead, and for about a day, the corpse, a dead man, was running Russia's transportation network. Then, on Monday afternoon, Business Consulting RBK came out with the news that Starovoyt had died 1 day prior, but later that day, RBK deleted that information from the website and informed of a different version, the official version, that he shot himself on Monday. Then there was no statement made from Vladimir Putin. Then Dmitry Peskov, the spokesperson of Vladimir Putin, made a statement saying that everyone around was shocked and terrified by the death of Roman Starovoyt. And I'm sure he is shocked and terrified, and many are terrified, because they're as vulnerable as Starovoyt turned out to be. Then another odd death happened. Minutes after Starovoyt's death was announced, Andrei Kornichuk, the deputy head of Rosavtodor Property Management Department, a part of the Ministry of Transportation, died in the building of the Ministry of Transportation, in his office, and he was one of the subordinates of the former Minister of Transportation. Kornichuk was 42 years old, in good health, and the investigators immediately announced the natural cause of death: heart failure. Without autopsy, just like that, on the spot, they came up with official verdict: heart failure. Then Putin introduced and met with the new Minister of Transportation, and the meeting was televised, and it happened very, very soon after the death of Starovoyt. Then the new minister made a speech at the parliament. Not one word of the former minister and not one question from the senators. Everyone was acting as they all of a sudden forgot that Starovoyt even existed. The Ministry of Transportation deleted information of the old minister from the website in a rush. And then there was the funeral, a very odd funeral. Starovoyt was buried in a regular cemetery in St. Petersburg. It's very odd considering there's an official version that he took his own life. There are special parts of cemeteries or special kinds of cemeteries for those who committed the mortal sin, took their life. And they are never buried among those who died of natural causes. On the grave, there was a cross placed. And that's a huge sign for me that something was not right, because they don't do that. Those who took their own lives, there's a special tradition of burying them differently than everyone else in Russian Orthodox Church. To top it off, Russia's RIA Novosti, that's a large information agency, the official agency, released information, a news article, that Vladimir Putin, Russian president, sent flowers to the funeral to put onto the grave. And just 1 hour later, RIA Novosti retracted the message, the article, and made a statement that there was a mistake made and they should have not released that news article. And it's still there at RIA Novosti website. I'm not suggesting that Starovoyt was murdered. But I see many unanswered questions, and it is clear to me that there's something very odd in this situation. The official stories changed so many times, but the two biggest questions remain. First is why there were so many changes in the official story. If it was as simple as, and I'm not gonna say this word, YouTube doesn't like it, then why not simply announce it? I mean, things happen, right? We understand we're all people. And it seems like there was a lot of misinformation done on purpose, to kind of cover up tracks. But to cover up what and why if there was no murder? So that's a huge question that remains. And the second question, why would a young, brilliant official, 52 years old, in excellent health, perhaps with hundreds of millions of dollars in his pockets, with a gorgeous 25-year-old fiancée, one of Putin's favorite, would take his life? No Russian minister since the head of the Soviet KGB in 1991 has taken his life. Even if former minister was arrested and charged with corruption and sentenced, that's happened before, he'd still be fine. Special prison, special conditions. He would get out in no time, and he would keep his money. The whole thing is fishy. Many unanswered questions. And by the way, what do you think? Please let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear your opinions on the death of Roman Starovoyt. There are so many theories right now, and the theory that is being pushed by the Kremlin propaganda is this. Starovoyt knew he did something very wrong. He knew he stole while constructing the military facilities, and that allowed the Ukraine to take part of Kursk province easily and, fight off Russian troops for 9 months. He knew he committed a sin against Russian state, and he framed Vladimir Putin, so he shot himself. This is not the most important part in this story. Yes, he's dead, but who cares how he died? Who cares, whether they covered up or not? The damage is done. And I would like to jump to the second part of the story, and much more important one than. Before I do that, I'd like to take this opportunity and thank you, everyone who is the part of Inside Russia community. Thank you for watching, for liking, for commenting, for emailing me, for interacting. Thank you for your messages, for prayers, and for your love. Thank you for the coffees you buy me at buymeacoffee.com, for Patreon, PayPal. Many of you might know that I was just demonetized by Google for the second time. But I promise you that no matter demonetized or monetized, I will continue standing up against unfairness, standing up against Russian regime, standing up against the war, and continue telling you the truth. You have my word on that. Thank you. Remember, I said in the beginning, it'll be fatal, it'll have fatal impact on Putin's system. Why fatal? Why this impact would be fatal? It's the first crack. For the last 3.5 years, I have forecasted the demise of Russian economy. I don't forecast that any longer. Instead, I'm observing and reporting you. Russian economy is falling apart. And it became obvious to me that it would fall apart. It became obvious in March of 2022 when Western companies started leaving Russia, and the country was hit with a slew of sanctions of every possible kind. The action was taken by Vladimir Putin, and it brought the reaction to Russian economy. For any economist out there, it's a no-brainer. It's as easy as ABC. You do an action, and there will be a reaction. But it is only now when it starts getting interesting. Russian economy demise is not the end, but it's only the beginning. It's going to be the reason of the demise of Putin's vertical of power. Putin's Russia is controlled by the vertical of power, vertikal vlasti, the system that governs the country. The vertical of power consists of two major parts, the government and siloviki. The government is a familiar structure. Many countries have it. The parliament, the ministers, the Supreme Court, the Constitutional Court, the provinces with their local governments and governors, etc. And the second part of that system is siloviki. It's a part of state unique to Russia. Siloviki are the law enforcement agencies, such as the most powerful agency in Russia, the secret police KGB, the federal police, the army, the prosecutors, the National Guard, Rosguardia, and quite a few others. These agencies' employees are armed and have power to use weapons against Russian citizens legally. There are more than 2 million siloviki in Russia. And by the way, silovik translates into English as one with power. Sila is force and power. So most agencies take orders directly from Russian president. You see, the government, that's different. It's created differently, and it takes orders from the prime minister, who is the biggest minister, and the governors have certain amount of power on the grounds in the provinces and so forth. Well, the biggest orders still come from the very top, but at least officially, most government agencies do not directly take orders from Putin. Now, most powerful agencies, siloviki, take orders directly from Russian president. To make it easier to understand, siloviki in Russia are very close to what the Praetorian Guards were in ancient Rome. The muscles and protectors of emperor, his family, and his imperial powers. Okay, enough about the vertical of power. This is where it's getting interesting, and there's one simple reason for that. The rules of the political game in Russia have just been changed. Vladimir Putin did an action, and there will be a reaction again, just like with the economy. Vladimir Putin is responsible again. He is responsible for destroying Russian economy, and the results we're seeing right now, and Russians are feeling the results right now. And he's responsible for destroying the political system. But we are seeing the very early stage of that, the very, very early step. But it'll change fast. The old rule of the game, or the political contract, we might call it, it was those who are part of the vertical of power must blindly obey orders of the superiors without asking questions. In return, they got unofficial, relative, but real legal immunity. And that's the most important. They could use their powers to enrich themselves. On top of the compensation they were getting from the state, in terms of salaries, bonuses, insurances, and so forth, they could use their powers to make an extra buck on the side. If you ask me what kind of powers, they come in various ways. Depends on agency. For example, the prosecutors have power to open or close criminal investigations, to confiscate private properties. Judges at courts have power of ruling and sentencing or acquitting. The ministers have power to choose contractors and suppliers. Remember, Starovoyt, about 13 years ago, was the head of Rosavtodor. And he was in charge of large infrastructural projects worth of billions of dollars. And he was the decision maker of which contractor to choose. Okay, that's a big power. That's worth a lot of money in Putin's Russia. Even the traffic policemen have power to stop the cars and issue fines or not issue fines. Now, I think you get the idea. Imagine all those people enjoy relative immunity. I say relative because sometimes they're caught committing crimes red-handed, usually corruption, taking bribes, giving bribes, and they're sentenced to real prison times. But usually the sentences are very light. They have probation, home arrest, and they have special prisons, of course. They are treated differently, unlike the rest of Russians. And the most important thing is they get to keep their money. That's what they got in the past in return for their loyal and silent service. Well, the rules of the game were changed on July 7th. Starovoyt was on the way out of his minister job, And yes, they were clouds above him and they were thickening. Corruption building military defense facilities in Kursk province while Starovoyt was the governor. Yeah, it's a pretty big charge, very serious charge. But since when in Russia corrupted ministers went to prison and, taking some money while you were spending the federal budget money, when was it considered a serious crime? Let alone, if the people turn out dead. Well, since July 7th, 2 deaths, one after another. And there will be others. There will be an avalanche of news like that coming out of Russia every day. And to keep everyone informed, I created what I call Formula 54. Every day I select 9 news that I find important and make them available to patrons of Inside Russia at patreon.com. 9 news a day, 6 days a week, 54 news. Every single week. I feel it helps those who are interested to know what's happening in Russia and with Russia, to find the information that is important, that matters, and cannot be found in anywhere in the mainstream media. Please consider trying Patreon to stay informed. There are still a lot of open questions about these 2 mysterious deaths, but they don't really matter. What matters is that the fact that Starovoyt was fired and turned out to be dead within hours. The top man, one of Putin's favorites, for years he was reporting directly to Putin while constructing, being in charge of construction of Crimea Bridge. And he is dead now. Mere 3 days after directly reporting to Putin in one of the government meetings. This is the precedent. Now every single member of the vertical of power is not so sure of their relative immunity. If death, not prison time, death happened to Starovoyt, one of the most favorite and powerful sons of Russian state, then it certainly can happen to everyone. The political contract between the state and the members of the vertical of power doesn't seem to be very solid any longer. I'm not saying that the vertical of power is destroyed. Oh no, far from it. But we just saw its foundation cracked. And it all starts with one crack. And cracks have a tendency of growing and multiplying. And do you know why we're seeing this crack? Because Russian state has run out of money. Before, loyalty of the members of the vertical of power was bought with money. And now the state will be getting loyalty with help of terror and fear. It's getting very interesting in Russia. Have your popcorn ready? Carthago delenda est.